The moment the Hoa president jabbed her finger at the bench and said, "You don't seem to understand. I'm the authority here," every person in that studio felt their stomach drop. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't sworn. But in a television courtroom where even seasoned lawyers chose their words carefully, calling a judge confused and misinformed had the same effect as flipping a table. You could actually hear the sound of people shutting up, papers stopped rustling. Someone in the second row cut off a cough halfway through. The bailiff turned his head a millimeter, just enough to track what he could already feel coming. At the defense podium, Olivia Brandt, 49 years old, president of the Silver Oaks Townhome Association, stood with the practiced entitlement of someone who'd spent the last decade telling full-grown adults what color curtains they could hang. Impeccable blazer, salon blonde hair, Hoa badge still clipped to her lapel like it meant something in this room. "This isn't one of your little landlord cases," she added, lips curling. "This is association law. It's complicated. You really should let someone who knows what she's doing explain it." Judge Judy didn't blink. Her eyes did something far more dangerous. They went still. The camera operators knew that look, that flat, focused stillness that meant the judge's patience had officially left the building and someone's world was about to shrink to the size of a manila folder. For once, it wasn't the plaintiff. At the other podium, Jamal Harris shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clutching a thick accordion file like a life jacket. He was 34, a software engineer, the kind of quiet neighbor every community claims to want. He paid his dues on time. He recycled. He brought boxes in for the old lady 2 doors down when Amazon left them at the gate. He thought moving into Silver Oaks 3 years earlier, a gated townhome development with a pool, a tiny playground, and glossy brochures about resort-style living meant stability for his 8-year-old daughter after a brutal divorce. Instead, he'd spent the last 18 months picking violation notices off his door like they were junk mail, $11,000 in fines, another 6 in legal fees when he dared to push back, and the woman now telling Judge Judy that she didn't understand Hoa law had been the author of almost every nightmare letter. His case summary was simple: Hoa harassment, fines beyond reason, threatened foreclosure over a children's inflatable pool and a barbecue grill. "I just want my money back and for this to stop." He thought that was what today was about. He thought this was going to be a simple, "you're right, you're wrong" ruling, maybe a stern lecture, some cameras, then home. What he didn't know, what none of the people in that room knew except one, was that this wasn't just a small claims dispute anymore. Not after Judge Judy's staff had started tugging at a thread on Olivia Brandt's smiling, respectable FOD. Not after they'd found former board members with stories, city records with red flags, a private towing company with a very familiar last name, and one very quiet email from a state investigator that ended with, "If you can get her under oath, we will be watching." Olivia had walked into this studio certain she was going to educate a TV judge and put an entitled homeowner in their place. She had no idea she'd just provoked the one person in America less impressed with Hoa power than her own neighbors, and she had no idea the words "I'm the authority here" would be replayed millions of times as the opening line in the video that finally ended her little kingdom. 3 years before that moment, Jamal thought Hoas were annoying at worst. He'd rented his whole adult life, apartments, duplexes, the occasional tiny house when a contract job paid well. Rules were always there: no grills on balconies, no loud music after 10, but they'd been background noise. When his ex-wife moved their daughter, Amara, across town to be closer to her new partner's family, he finally snapped. "I'm not going to be the weekend dad in a crummy place," he'd told his best friend. "If I'm only seeing her 3 nights a week, those 3 nights are going to be somewhere she's proud of, somewhere with a pool." At least, Silver Oaks looked perfect on paper. 20 minutes from his office, 10 from Amara's new school, twistory townhomes with tiny fenced patios, community landscaping, the whole safe, clean, family-friendly pitch. At the showing, the realtor had beamed. "These units go fast," she'd said. "Great schools, very involved Hoa, keeps everything looking nice. You'll never have to worry about bad neighbors." There were red flags he didn't yet know how to see. The Hoa binder she slid across the table at signing was thicker than his lease, page after page of rules. No items of any kind on patios without pre-approval. No unsightly toys visible from the common areas. No exterior furniture not in earth tones. He flipped past them. Just Don't park on the grass and don't paint it neon, right? He joked. The realtor laughed a little too loud. Exactly, she said. They just like things consistent. It keeps property values high. He signed. The first violation came 3 weeks after he moved in. He'd come home from Costco with a trunk full of groceries and a small charcoal grill. Amara had been bouncing behind him the whole way up the stairs. Can we have a barbecue? Please, Dad? With hot dogs like at Auntie Keisha's? She'd begged. Of course, he'd said. We have a backyard now. That's what backyards are for. Their backyard was a 10-button concrete pad and a strip of mulch behind the sliding glass door. He set the grill up against the fence. He bought a cheap outdoor chair set online, dark brown, to match the Hoa brochure photos, just in case. They grilled. They laughed. They ate on paper plates. Jamal went to bed that night thinking, okay, maybe this could feel like a real home. The letter was taped to his door at a.m. Notice of violation unauthorized exterior equipment, Mr. Harris, it read. Our community guidelines clearly prohibit charcoal grills on patios due to safety and aesthetic concerns. Immediate removal required. $150 fine assessed. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in additional penalties. At the bottom, in neat looping handwriting. O. Brandt, President, Silver Oaks, Hoa. He frowned. He checked the binder. Buried on page 47, in a block of dense text, was the sentence, "No charcoal or wood-burning grills are permitted on patios or in any common area." Okay, he muttered, my bad. He hauled the grill into his garage, grumbling, and paid the fine online. He even tried to shrug off the second notice a month later, this one for patio clutter, after Amara left a deflated inflatable pool and a plastic scooter by the sliding door. Just put your stuff in the storage box when you're done, baby, he'd told her. We have to keep Dad's Hoa happy. He didn't start worrying until the third. Trash can visible from street, it read. 6:09 a.m. 75. He stared at it. He'd taken the bin out the night before, after work. Pickup was at a.m. on the dot. He'd set an alarm for 6:15 to drag it back in. Someone in those 9 minutes had taken a picture, logged the time, and fined him. He started to notice things. The way a white SUV with a Hoa on-duty magnet rolled slowly past his unit more often than the others. The way his neighbor's teenage son could leave a skateboard half-propped against their step and never get a letter, while one of Amara's chalk drawings brought a bright yellow notice the same afternoon. He went to a meeting. That's where he met Olivia. Mr. Harris, is it? She'd said, looking over her glasses as he took a seat in the folding care circle in the clubhouse. You're new to the community. He'd tried to keep his voice neutral. Yes, ma'am, he'd replied. I just wanted to ask if there's any grace period for new residents with some of these rules. I'm trying, I really am, but it feels like I'm getting written up for every little thing. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. We send the covenants with your welcome packet, she said. Ignorance of the rules doesn't excuse violating them. Silver Oaks has worked very hard to maintain a standard. That's why you moved here, isn't it? I moved here so my daughter could ride her scooter without me worrying about gunshots, he said, a little sharper than he intended. Not so she could be scared of drawing with chalk. Another board member, a tired-looking man in a polo shirt, shifted in his seat. Liv, maybe we could, he began. She cut him off. We can't make exceptions. She snapped. The moment you start bending rules for one person, everyone wants a special deal. If Mr. Harris wants to live somewhere with looser standards, there are plenty of other communities. He'd gone home that night angry, but still thinking this was just a personality clash. He hadn't yet seen the spreadsheet in her home office, the one with every resident's name, lot number, and a column labeled compliant problem. His name had gone into the second column the moment he questioned her at that meeting. If you asked Olivia how she ended up running a 186-unit townhome association like a private kingdom, she'd tell you it was an accident, that she fell into it. The truth was uglier. Olivia grew up in a small town where the PTA might as well have been Congress. Her mother chaired committees for fun, bake sale. She was their talent show. She had notes. There was always a clipboard in their house, always a discussion about who was good for the community and who was bringing it down. Olivia learned early that the person with the sign-up sheet controlled who got to be at the table. In college, she majored in communications and minored in student government. It wasn't about serving. It was about being the one with the gavel. Her first job was in a condo management company. She watched as associations relied on them to interpret rules, issue fines, negotiate contracts. She saw the way certain managers would steer contracts toward companies that gave them little kickbacks. She learned the language: preferred vendor, service retainer, administrative fee. When she married Nate Brandt at 32 and they bought into Silver Oaks, she saw the HOA not as a nuisance but as a ladder. Within 6 months, she'd volunteered to help with communication. Within a year, she'd run for a board seat unopposed. When the previous president moved away, she reluctantly agreed to take the role. By then, she'd already quietly pushed through several changes. A new compliance fee schedule that allowed her to stack administrative charges on top of fines. A contract with Safe Tow Recovery, the towing company her younger brother had started after a string of dues made him unemployable elsewhere. A clause that any repeat offender could have their case referred to outside counsel conveniently. A law firm that cut a nice referral fee back to the management company, which cut a nice holiday bonus check to certain board members. Nothing illegal on its face, nothing anyone reading the covenants in good faith would catch, until you started lining up who got fined, who got towed, and where the money went. Judge Judy's research team had done exactly that. The first clue hadn't even been Jamal's case. It was a different email a retired couple had written in 6 months earlier. Our HOA president fined us $3,000 for having our granddaughter's bicycle on the porch. They'd written, we had to sell and move. Now we see our old place is being rented out as an investment property by her husband's LLC. Is that legal? At the time, the show's producers had flagged it as interesting but not quite production ready. No clear documentation, no plaintiff willing to go on TV yet. Then Jamal's application hit their inbox. He had everything: letters, emails, photos, a printout of his online ledger showing every fine and fee, and most importantly, a willingness to show up and talk. The producers took one look and walked it straight to Judy. HOA harassment, she'd said, flipping through the initial summary. We've done those. Not like this, her senior producer replied. And wait until you see what research found on the board president. By the time Jamal landed in law with his file folder and his nerves, the show already had a much bigger story mapped out. Olivia thought she did too, while Judy's team was pulling tow records from the city clerk's office. Olivia was at her dining table in Silver Oaks, rehearsing lines in front of her laptop camera. Property values, she practiced, community standards. We have to be fair to the majority who follow the rules. She'd spent hours picking her outfit, not too flashy, not too plain, respectable. She chose a navy blazer, cream blouse, a small gold cross necklace she only wore for things where she wanted to project morals. Her husband watched with mixed feelings from the kitchen. Are you sure about this? Nate asked. TV makes everything crazy. What if they edit it? They can't edit facts, she said, brushing imaginary lint from her skirt. I have the rules. I have the violation photos. I've done nothing wrong. Besides, this is good for Silver Oaks. People will see we don't tolerate disorder. He didn't say what he was thinking, that he'd seen 2 families cry in their driveway as they loaded moving trucks after losing fights with the HOA, that he'd signed the paperwork for Brandt Residential Holdings LLC without fully understanding why it only ever bought foreclosed units in their own neighborhood. He just nodded. Good luck, he said. The morning of taping, Olivia walked into the studio like it was another board meeting. She shook hands with the segment producer, smiled at the makeup artist, chatted politely in the green room with a woman suing her ex-boyfriend over a dog. Jamal sat 2 chairs away, quiet, earbuds in, looking like a man holding himself together by 6 threads. She didn't recognize him without the context of his driveway, his mailbox, his little patio where she'd once taken a photo of a single Lego block and labeled it clutter. When the bailiff finally called them in, the audience murmured. Regular Judge Judy viewers had already been briefed by the warm-up comedian. This one's special. He'd grinned. We've got an HOA president in the house. Groans and laughter in equal measure. People had HOA stories. Everybody did. Nobody liked the person who wrote those letters. They liked the person who was about to read this one's history a whole lot more. All rise, the bailiff called. This is case number 117 on the calendar, Harris versus Brandt and Silver Oaks Town Home Association. Judge Judy walked in, took her seat, and let the room settle. Be seated, she said. We're on the record. Jamal swallowed. Olivia smiled. The folder on Judy's bench sat there quietly. waiting. The beginning played out like 100 cases before it. Names confirmed, amounts stated, basic outline recited. Mr. Harris, you're suing Miss Brandt and the Silver Oaks HOA for $11,840 in fines and fees, Judge Judy said. Miss Brandt, you're countersuing for $4,000 in unpaid assessments and legal costs. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Jamal said. That's correct, Olivia echoed. Mr. Harris, Judy said, fixing him with that sharp, see-through stare. In plain English, tell me what this is about. No speeches, no life story, just what happened between you and this association. He took a breath. I moved into Silver Oaks 3 years ago, he said. I started getting violation letters almost immediately, first for a grill, which I removed, then for my daughter's toys on the patio, then for trash cans out for 9 minutes. It escalated. They fined me $1,800 for an inflatable kiddie pool one weekend. He swallowed again. I've paid what I could, he said. I'm here because I feel like I'm being targeted. I want my money back, and I want them to stop. Judge Judy flipped through the copies he'd provided. Fine, fee, patio photograph after patio photograph. She turned to Olivia. Miss Brandt, she said. Your response, Olivia clasped her hands. Your Honor, she began, this is a classic case of a resident who believes the rules don't apply to him. Silver Oaks is a deed-restricted community. We have clear covenants every homeowner signs. I don't write the rules, I enforce them. Refuse, Judy repeated. Mr. Harris removed the grill after one letter, correct? Yes, Olivia said. He put his daughter's things away after the chalk incident, correct? Judy asked. Yes, Olivia said reluctantly, but then there were other issues, like... Judy prompted, like persistent patio clutter, unauthorized plant containers, guests parking in visitor spots overnight. She rattled off. We sent multiple notices. He argued instead of complying. Judge Judy's eyebrow arched almost imperceptibly. We'll come back to your officer, she said. For now, I want to focus on you. In your 8 years as president, how many homeowners have had liens placed on their properties for unpaid fines? Olivia didn't hesitate. 8, she said, which out of 186 is very few. And how many of those 8 ultimately lost or sold their homes as a result? Judy asked. 5, Olivia said. Again, that's their choice. They could have complied. Judy set the folder down. That's fascinating, she said lightly, because all 5 of those properties show up here. She tapped a printout as being purchased within 6 months of lien filing by an entity called Brandt Residential Holdings LLC. That wouldn't be any relation to you, would it, Miss Brandt? A flicker, just a tiny one, in Olivia's eyes. My husband buys investment properties, she said, trying to keep her voice smooth. That's not relevant. Those homes were on the open market. We didn't force anyone to sell. You forced them to the edge with fines you controlled, then benefited when they fell off, Judy said. That's your interpretation, Olivia snapped. We followed our covenants to the letter. Maybe if Mr. Harris read his, we wouldn't be wasting everyone's time. Mrs. Brandt, Judy said, the Mrs. suddenly razor-sharp. This is not your clubhouse. You don't get to roll your eyes and dismiss people here. You also don't get to imply that I don't understand contracts. Olivia's temper, which had been simmering since the show began, finally boiled.
2. With all due respect, Judge, she said, loading the title with as much sarcasm as she could. This is association law. It's not as simple as landlord-tenant. I read these covenants every day. You hear about dogs and broken leases. You clearly don't understand how complex this is. There it was. You clearly don't understand. It hung in the air like a match over gasoline, the audience murmured. The bailiff shifted his stance. Jamal's head jerked up. Judge Judy sat very still. Then, with devastating calm, she reached for the thick manila folder with Brandt, Olivia on the tab, and pulled it closer. Ms. Brandt, she said softly, I may not read your covenants every day, but I have read something else of yours, something I think your neighbors and everyone watching deserve to hear about. Olivia's confidence drained a fraction. What are you talking about? She asked. Judy opened the folder. Let's start, she said, with the complaint file from the state's Department of Consumer Affairs. The one that mentions your name, your HOA, your brother's towing company, and uses a very interesting word, kickback. The room went absolutely silent. Even Olivia stopped breathing. What complaint? She managed. Oh, several, Judy said. But don't worry, I'm going to read you the best parts. According to this complaint, Judge Judy began, eyes scanning the page. Filed by a former Maple Ridge, Silver Oaks board member. Your association entered into an exclusive contract with Safeto Recovery 3 years ago. She glanced up. Safeto is owned by one Tyler Brandt, she said. Your brother. Olivia's jaw clenched. Yes, she said. We needed reliable towing. The previous company was unresponsive. My brother offered us a discount for the association, Judy said. And in exchange, we guaranteed him business, she said stiffly. It's called a vendor agreement. It's common practice. In this complaint, Judy continued, tapping the paper. The former board secretary alleges that you pushed through a change to the parking rules at the same time. Increasing fines, decreasing the grace period before towing, and, mysteriously, residents started seeing their cars hauled after as little as 15 minutes in a visitor space. She flipped to another page. This resident writes, she read, I parked in my own driveway with 2 tires, slightly touching the curb line. I came out 20 minutes later to find Safeto hooking my car. The driver told me, talk to Olivia. I got a $350 bill. Jamal's eyes widened. He remembered the night he'd watched his neighbor's Honda disappear on a flatbed for being an inch over a faded line. Don't control where they park, Olivia said quickly. If someone's in violation, you decide what a violation is, Judy cut in. And your brother profits every time you decide someone broke it. She picked up another sheet. Let's talk about this, she said, an internal email provided by that same ex-board member. From you to the management company. Quote, we need to be more aggressive with parking enforcement. Tyler says he can handle increased volume. Fines and tow fees will help offload the budget shortfall. Olivia's face flushed. That email is privileged, she sputtered. You can't. This is my courtroom, Judy said sharply. I can do a lot of things you're not going to like today. She set the towing documents aside. Now, she went on, about your background. When you ran for HOA president, did you disclose to your neighbors that you had been terminated from Fairview Property Management for ethical violations related to vendor selection? Stared at her. That was a misunderstanding, she said. A former supervisor had it out for me. It's not relevant to, did you or did you not sign a separation agreement acknowledging that you'd failed to report a conflict of interest in awarding a security contract to a company partially owned by your then-boyfriend? Judy pressed. Olivia hesitated. Yes, she said finally. But that was a pattern, Judy interjected. Rewarding people close to you with association business. Letting them profit from rules you write. And now, with your husband's LLC buying homes, people lose after your fines, price them out. She leaned forward. The word for that, Ms. Brandt, is self-dealing, she said. At best. At worst, it's fraud. Olivia's mask cracked. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, voice pitching higher. These are minor administrative things. We're talking about grills and trash cans, not crime. Judy's gaze hardened. You stole homes out from under people by turning petty violations into financial weapons, she said. You terrorized families over kiddie pools and chalk drawings. Then made money when they broke. She turned to Jamal. Mr. Harris, she said, do you have any evidence that other residents committed the same offenses you were fined for and were not written up? Yes, Your Honor, he said, fumbling in his folder. Photos. Dates. I printed the community Facebook posts too. People bragging about their grills and pools. No yellow notices on their doors. He laid them out. 1. A white couple 3 doors down, posed proudly next to a smoker on their patio. Caption, Summer Cookout at the Tanners. Love this community. No violation notice in sight. In another, kids chalked a giant rainbow across the main sidewalk in front of a different unit. Their mom had commented, love how creative our little artists are. Followed by heart emojis from neighbors. No $200 defacement fines mentioned in the thread. Judge Judy studied them. And you, Ms. Brandt, she said, chose to enforce these rules against Mr. Harris, but not them. Why? I can't be everywhere at once, Olivia said. We rely on reports. If no one complains, several of these are from your own social media account. Judy cut in, holding up a printout with liked by Olivia Brandt under the smiling grill photo. You saw them. You interacted. You chose to ignore them. Miss Harris has been combative from day one, Olivia snapped. People who cooperate get grace. People who fight get consequences. There it is, Judy said softly. Grace for the compliant. Punishment for the ones who dare ask why you have so much power. She closed the folder with a decisive snap. Ms. Brandt, she said, you called me confused about the law. Let me educate you. The room stilled. In every contract, she said, there is an implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. It means you don't abuse your discretion. You don't turn a rulebook into a weapon to settle scores or enrich yourself. When you do, you breach that covenant. And a judge, even a TV judge, gets to say, enough. Olivia swallowed. My job is to protect property values, she said weakly. No, Judy said. Your job was to serve your neighbors. You turned them into marks. She picked up her pen. As to the plaintiff's claim, she said, I find in favor of Mr. Harris for the full amount of $11,840 in fines and fees, which this court finds were imposed arbitrarily and in bad faith. Silver Oaks HOA is ordered to refund that sum within 30 days. She flipped a page. As to your counterclaim, Ms. Brandt, she continued, denied utterly. You will not collect another dime from this man in the name of assessments. Olivia opened her mouth. Additionally, Judy said over her, given the evidence of self-dealing, undisclosed conflicts, and a disturbing pattern of exploiting enforcement power for private gain, I am referring this matter, including all documents and this recording, to the State Attorney General, the Department of Real Estate, and the County Prosecutor's Office for further investigation. Olivia's eyes finally showed something other than contempt. Fear. You can't, she started. I just did, Judy said, and I will also be sending a copy of this judgment and your prior employment records to the Silver Oaks HOA board, with a personal recommendation that you be removed from any position of authority immediately. She looked directly into the camera. And for everyone living under an HOA bully, she said, hear this. Nobody gets to run your neighborhood like a private fiefdom. Not the woman with the clipboard, not the guy with the tow truck on speed dial. They work for you. Not the other way around. The gavel slammed. Case dismissed. She said, we're done. In the split second before the cameras cut, you could see two very different faces. On one side, Jamal exhaling, like he'd been underwater for a year. On the other, Olivia blinking, as if trying to wake up from a dream where for the first time in a long time, she was the one being told what she could and couldn't do. The internet did the rest. Within 24 hours of the episode airing, clips of Olivia saying, I'm the authority here, cut together with Judge Judy reading her employment termination, had racked up millions of views. People stitched the part where Judy said, grace for the compliant. Punishment for the ones who dare ask why you have so much power, overlaying it with their own HOA horror stories. One video from a nurse in Arizona went viral on its own. This is for the president who fined me for having a COVID testing sign in my yard, she said, eyes wet. We need more judges like her. At Silver Oaks, someone slid printed copies of the judgment under every front door. An emergency meeting followed. Nate sat at one end of the clubhouse, staring at his hands, as residents lined up at the microphone. Why weren't we told you were kicked out of your last job for the same thing? One neighbor demanded. When exactly were you going to mention your brother owned the tow company? Another asked. How many people lost their homes so your LLC could get cheap rentals? A third shouted. Olivia tried to regain control. You're all reacting emotionally, she said. That show edited. I've seen the paperwork. The former board secretary cut in, holding up a thick folder with tabs. You want to talk about editing? Let's talk about the financial reports you wouldn't let us see without a confidentiality agreement. The recall vote wasn't even close. 2 weeks later, a letter from the Attorney General's office arrived at the Brandt house, notice of inquiry. The header read, potential violation of state HOA, and consumer protection laws. Safeto's trucks stopped cruising the complex. Brandt Residential Holdings quietly listed 3 of its units for sale. At Jamal's unit, things changed in smaller, quieter ways. No more yellow papers on his door. No more white SUV crawling by at 6 a.m. Amara drew a full-color mural on the entire length of their patio. One Saturday unicorns. Planets, a giant sun with heart-shaped rays, and when she looked up nervously and said, "Is the lady gonna yell at us?" Jamal knelt down and smiled. "There is no lady," he said. "Not anymore." He still kept the HOA binder on a shelf. He still read the minutes. He even ran for a board seat in the next election. Not because he wanted power, because he'd learned the hard way what happens when you leave it to people who do. On the wall inside his front door, tucked in the corner, he taped one printed sentence he'd pulled from a transcript of that episode. "So I'd see it," he told a friend later. "Every time I walked past." The line, "Nobody gets to run your neighborhood like a private fiefdom." It was signed, unofficially, by millions of people who'd watched an HOA tyrant finally meet someone she couldn't fine into silence.